Hi, I'm Kathy Lewis, CEO of My 4-Year Plan, and I'm really excited tonight to have with me Anna Rumer on this segment of Career Snapshots from My 4-Year Plan, which is a professional college planning company in the North Hills of Pittsburgh, but really serving clients all over the nation. So a lot of times I'll have students come into my office with questions about careers and majors and how it all fits together. So during this unique season, I really wanted to dive down and talk with a lot of different professionals working in a variety of industries and careers. And so tonight's topic and focus is on journalism. So Anna, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be talking with you today.
Yes. So Anna, what is your current role?
So currently I work as a television reporter for popculture.com, which is part of CBS. And I also host their weekly TV roundup podcast called Group Chat.
That is so cool. So where are you based out of?
So I'm based in Pittsburgh. Pop culture is actually based in Nashville, but a really cool thing that's been really happening in the media recently is they've realized that a lot of people can work remotely. So I used to work in Nashville and then wanted to be closer to family, and they were able to make it work. So now I'm close to family and I work for the same company. So that's very cool.
So this sounds like an amazing job that you have. So what does a typical day look like for you?
So a typical day for me, I work an earlier shift, so I log on at about 7 in the morning. I watch all of the morning TV, like the Today Show, The View, all of that stuff.
Wow.
And yeah, it's really fun, actually. I'd never watched any of it before I started doing the
You're
earlier
getting
shift.
paid to watch TV.
Yeah, it's anytime I feel about like I'm going to complain about my job, I remember that I'm getting paid to watch TV and I put that on hold. But it's a lot of live blogging, so watching TV, watching for kind of buzzy stories or something interesting that happens and writing that quickly, putting that online. And then in the time in between that, I just write other stories from interviews I've done earlier or TV clips that have been sent over to me by PR people that we work together pretty regularly. So I'll write up previews or interviews that I've done. And it's a very fast-paced job, but it's a lot of fun, and it's dealing with TV and celebrities. So, I mean, can't complain.
That's so amazing. So probably one of the first questions that people ask you is, which cool people have you met?
So I've met a ton of really cool people. I think one of the coolest for me was Joe Manganiello, who he was in Magic Mike, and he's in some comic book movies too. I interviewed him when I went out to San Diego to cover Comic-Con last year, and he's a Pittsburgh boy, so he was very excited to talk to me about Pittsburgh. He actually went to the school district that my sister teaches at, so we bonded there. But I've talked to so many people. If they're on reality TV, like one of the Real Housewives, I've probably talked to them.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I actually have talked to all of the Deadliest Catch guys. I got to go up to Alaska and go fishing with them for a
Now,
story.
was that a part of pop culture?
Yes, yeah.
So
So
I remember hearing about that, and I remember watching your segment. So how did that come about?
So we work really closely with the PR people for networks. It's a little different than when I worked not in TV, where you have a little bit of a different relationship with PR people. But in television, because we're all trying to get the same thing done, we work really closely with PR people. So basically, it was a relationship with me and one of the Discovery PR people. I joked that I wanted to go up on the Deadliest Catch boat, and I thought it would be really funny because I wasn't going to be good at it. And he goes, are you being serious? And I said, absolutely. So we managed to work something out where I went up to Alaska, we filmed a little segment, it promoted Deadliest Catch, so that's good for them. It gave us a lot of content, so it was good for us, and it was kind of a mutually beneficial little vacation I got to take.
That had to be a little bit scary. I mean, it's one thing to be a journalist, and it's another thing to, be a journalist in the context of what's actually happening. I've seen, meteorologists out there when a tornado or a hurricane is on the horizon. It's like that's like the real deal, and it sounds like that's what that was for you.
Yeah, that one was, I think I was a little naive in the moment. Looking back, a lot of things could have gone wrong, but I was feeling very optimistic about it, and I was surrounded by a lot of people who were definitely watching my back at all times, so
So
it
as
was a little
far,
scary,
yeah,
but
If a person watching this segment right now wanted to see that segment, how could they go ahead and do that?
So that's on popculture.com's YouTube page. If you click there, there's just Pop Culture goes to Deadliest Catch, I believe.
Okay.
Send over the link afterwards too, if you want
Okay,
to.
fantastic. Yeah, we can put that out there. So, is a portion of your job then like first person interviews, and then another portion is, I guess social media really wouldn't be the right word for it, but what portion of it is it first person interviewing, and what portion of it is creating blog content, right?
So it's definitely changed over the years. When I first got hired, it was 100% me blogging, and then I started to do more on camera interviews and showed kind of an aptitude there.
Nice.
So I am probably about 60% blogging and 40% doing the podcasts and the interviews. And you mentioned social media. I'm on our Instagram team too, so I write all the captions for our Instagram posts. So basically, if you get into journalism, get ready to wear like a million hats because you're going to do everything all at once.
Okay, so speaking of journalism, going back a little bit, so what was the first age that you can remember thinking, I would like to be a journalist, or I'd like to know more about journalism?
Looking back, when I was about 7 or 8, I was in a carpool just for after school activities. And I started to put together a newsletter for the carpool. It was pretty cute. Everyone contributed little comics and advice columns and all sorts of stories. So that was kind of my first taste of journalism. But then I did a high school newspaper. I did a high school media because I really like to write, and I'm not great at writing fiction. So one of my high school English teachers said, well, that's pretty much the good option for you then.
What did you not know about journalism back then that you very quickly learned as soon as you get out of college?
They always tell you that it's intense, and you can know that it's going to be intense going in, but my first job right off the bat, I didn't really realize that you get to work and you grind all day and then you are done at the end. But it's insanely intense, but it's also so rewarding at the end of the day that you get energy from it if it's something that you really love.
Well, sure, and it's changing so much because so much of print is kind of going away and fading, and so you've probably had to constantly be evolving yourself and kind of your own brand, would you say?
Oh, absolutely. When I first started working, I started working for the Zanesville Times Recorder, which is this little newspaper. It's very print focused back when I started back in 2014, tiny little town in Ohio. So it was very print focused, and we were really doing a lot of in-depth pieces with, photographs and spreading that out physically in the paper.
Wow.
Yeah, right. That doesn't happen anymore. We've been through when I was still working for that paper and then a sister paper out in California, we did a whole digital revamp where then we were working on videos, and I had sworn to myself when I first started doing journalism that I would never do a video because I was just uncomfortable being in front of the camera. And so then it was all video, and then we switched over to online publishing first. You really have to be able to roll with the punches because it's always changing.
So Zanesville was your first job out of college, right? And so this was full-time beat reporting, just human interest or hard news or a little bit of everything.
So I started off, I was technically the city government reporter, but
Okay.
there were 2 reporters there when I first started. There would eventually be 3 of us. So everyone kind of did everything a little bit.
Sure.
And if someone was on vacation, then, all holds bar, everyone's doing everything. But it was a really good way to immediately get my feet wet, because if I had worked there and only focused on government when I went to my next job and was working the crime beat, I wouldn't have had any kind of background in that. But because I did do a little crime coverage in Zanesville, I knew mostly what I was doing whenever I moved on to my next job.
So even though that may not have been the most glamorous start, would you say that it really helped you to be able to have the whole panorama of journalism, from sports to, like as you said, city government, crime, human interest all rolled into one. So it kind of prepped you for being able to do just about anything after that, right?
Oh yeah, it was the perfect first job. I always advise people to really start off where they can get their hands dirty and have a boss that is actually really interested in watching them grow. My editor there, she had a rule where she didn't want to see you after 2 years because it was a tiny paper and she wanted to grow you as a young reporter and move you on.
What a
So
gift, right? I mean, there's not a lot of people that would, position themselves that way.
yeah, when I told her I got a new job, I was so nervous because I just loved her and I felt really bad about it. And she was like, heck yes, like, that's what we've been working for.
That's awesome. So did you go to school in Ohio, or where did you go to school?
I did. I went to the EW Scripps School of Journalism at Ohio University. So I was
Nice.
right next to Zanesville. That's how I ended up there.
Perfect. So what was that experience like as a journalism school student?
So it was a ton of fun. The Post is the newspaper there. I didn't want to work for the Post. I wanted to do something a little bit more digitally focused.
Okay.
So me and a couple of political science students helped form a new online publication called The New Political,
Nice.
and we founded that, and then that's still going nowadays. They're doing a way better job than we did
That's
when we
so
started.
cool to look back and say that you started that.
Well, and the guys who are doing it now are amazing. We were bumbling around with our eyes shut and trying to figure out how to publish things online. But it's a really cool publication. So I did that, and it prepares you as much as like a classroom in a student run publication can prepare you. I felt really really prepared for what I was doing whenever I actually went to a real paper. I knew what I was talking about, and all the nerves that you get going into your first journalism job, they were diminished by, after the first couple of days when you realize, okay, I've done all of this before. My professors have really prepared me.
Yeah. So, and that's just really interesting because as I do these segments and talk to folks, I always like to say, was it the classroom experience actually that prepared you, or was it maybe an internship or another activity? And it sounds like a combination. Fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, our professors were amazing. The classes were great, but that extracurricular activity, actually putting stuff together, actually working with a team of editors and with reporters, that was really invaluable there. And that's what the professors in journalism school, I would imagine everywhere, but definitely at OU, they push for you to do that extracurricular stuff because there's only so much you can learn in a classroom that
Yep.
you're not going to learn, at 3 a.m. in the library, bashing your head on the computer.
Yeah. So did they require you to do an internship, or how did that work?
Yeah, so we were required to do an internship. I did my internship with Edunations, which
Okay.
you're familiar with. It's a nonprofit that builds schools in Sierra Leone.
In
Works.
Africa. So yeah. So what did that consist of then?
So what I did is I went on 2 trips with them. It's 2 or 3. My memory blurs at that point. And I did video and blogging for them for the trip so that they could show the footage and that kind of thing to people who were going to donate at the annual meeting. So that was where I got mine. A lot of people did different internships at papers and stuff like that, but I really wanted to be back at home with my family during the summer, so I kind of found like an alternative route.
Well, it was nice because it allowed you, it sounds like, to be at home, but also to be out in the international community, right?
Yeah, it was an absolutely fantastic experience too, and it really upped my video game, which at the time, when I went to college, we had one online journalism class, and at the start, the professor was like, does anyone here know how to use WordPress? So I went to college right at the cusp of all this online stuff happening, so a lot of figuring that out and figuring out how to do video and audio stuff was up to us in our early career.
I mean, I'm imagining that you had to have like in the olden days they would have called them clippings. Maybe they would call it a portfolio or a book, right? So to be able to show content of things that you've worked on to get that first job, is that right?
Oh yeah. So your clips are huge. And number one thing that I tell people who are looking to get into journalism, because a lot of the people that I work with now didn't go to school for journalism. They maybe went for English. I have a couple business major colleagues. So
Interesting.
but if you write something that you're proud of and that shows the thought process, almost every editor that I've worked with is more than happy to teach the, the P's and Q's of AP style and how to put together a story, as long as you have that raw ability to write. And so if you have something you're proud of that you've written, whether it's fiction or nonfiction or something for a local newsletter or something like that, put it in your clips, honestly, because it does make a difference.
So if you were talking to somebody who's thinking, well, should I major in journalism or not? I'm a decent writer. Maybe my grammar's not so good. Would you say that's something that can be fixed in college and ironed out along the way?
Oh yeah. The grammar, some of the best writers I know, their grammar's, half and half, but they've got really a gift for storytelling, a gift for getting their information across. Behind every good writer is a great editor. And I have had wonderful editors over the years who have fixed my grammar and any typos or anything like that. So if that's what's holding you back, you're concerned about your spelling or your grammar, you can iron that out. And that's always something you can get past.
Now, how did you make the segue from, okay, so you were in Zanesville, and then you said you went to their sister corporation in San Francisco. Is that how that worked?
So I went from Zanesville to, this is all part of Gannett, which is a big media corporation. So I went from Zanesville to Palm Springs, California.
Okay. Wow, that must have been beautiful.
It's gorgeous. It's about 1,000,000 degrees in the summer, which is why I only spent a couple of years there. I was just getting too hot. But the desert sun was amazing. I initially was a breaking news and crime reporter there.
And when you say desert sun, just so that people understand, we're not talking about the desert sun, but that's the actual name of the newspaper, right?
Yes, that's the name of the newspaper.
Okay, yeah.
So I started off breaking news and crime. That's not really where my heart is. It kind of there are a lot of people who really love it and really stay with it for years. For me, it got very depressing very quickly. So I moved over to local politics again, which is where I started. So kind of going full circle, and worked there for a little over 2 years, and was looking to make the move back to the East Coast because I wanted to be closer to my family, and was a little burnt out of the really serious reporting. I'd been going really hard for a long time.
Yeah.
And so I was looking at entertainment reporting. I'd always had kind of a side passion for pop culture and what that means in the world and what that reflects about our culture. So one of my friends worked for the corporation I work for now. I reached out and sent over a few clips, and bing bang.
Wow. So really, without a lot of background in entertainment, it literally was bing bang. So you were able to make that segue to no concern of theirs. They were like, you're a good writer, then we know you've got the transferable skills to be able to do that same thing for us, only in this kind of genre, right?
Exactly. You can pretty much convince anyone that you can write about their beat as long as you can write. And also, I think I talked to them on the phone about the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills for like 30 minutes. And they're like, okay.
We got it. Like, this girl coming from California, she knows what she's talking about.
Right.
So how much of your job is travel then, since you're doing some first-person interviews and you went to Alaska?
So it really kind of comes in waves. It all happens at once. There'll be a couple months where I'll be home for 3 or 4 days. Which gets to be a lot. And then there'll be 4 or 5 months where I'll travel once, so it really depends on what kind of press trips are set up. Right now, obviously Comic-Con is our huge event, every summer, but that just got canceled. So
right.
We're kind of waiting on what's going to happen when these things are all going to get rescheduled, but I guarantee they're all going to get scheduled really close to each other. So I'm prepping myself for some pretty intense travel months ahead.
I bet. And if you're interviewing people that maybe are on the West Coast, then maybe your day doesn't just end at 5. Maybe it ends at 8 or 9 o'clock at night.
That is one thing that I would stress to reporters is set boundaries early
Yeah.
in your personal life, because I spent years working pretty much all day, when I woke up to when I went to bed, and sometimes wake up in the middle of the night and write some stuff down, check a few emails, and that can burn you out really quickly. So now what I do is I have a very set time from 7 to like 6 or 7 at night. I'm working or available to work. And after that, I just shut it down. I don't answer any emails unless they're absolutely urgent. And everyone that I work with really knows and respects those boundaries, because I think that it's becoming more normal in
Sure.
work culture.
So as you're thinking about other things that maybe you'd like to do, like what are maybe some of your bigger ambitions?
I love podcasting. We started Group Chat, which is the podcast that I do for Pop Culture Now. We started that off as a video series, and whenever I moved back to Pittsburgh, I kind of took it as an opportunity to switch it over to podcast format, because there's so much growth there right now. I know the joke is that everyone has a podcast, but it truly, the amount of downloads and listens that we got right off the bat once we started a podcast were outrageous. We hit 500,000 listens in like 2 or 3 months.
How?
People love podcasts, and that's like a really big area of growth right now. So I would urge people who are looking to go into journalism, take an audio editing class or take a podcasting class, because man, it's super hard to learn by yourself.
You sound like you're speaking from the voice of experience.
I spent about an hour earlier today banging my head against the keyboard and being like, why doesn't this work? So take a class, guys, because it's really valuable, but it's a steep learning curve.
Was Group Chat's success story also rooted in an already eager following from popculture.com? So would you say that kind of helped push it to that height right away?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, basically our readers were eager for more content about that, and the podcast's kind of more jovial take on the more serious news, if you can call it serious, but the more straight down the middle takes about what's going on with TV and celebrities. We're a little goofy on Group Chat. We make fun of things a little bit. So I think this was just a natural extension of what we already do, and people eat it up. We're doing a podcast a week now, and thinking about ramping it up. But I would love to do more podcasting, because it's a blast. I love doing it.
Even maybe for your starting your own channel, it sounds like.
Yeah, I have several podcasts with friends now at this point that aren't earning any money, but they're just fun to do, and a little side project. I don't sit still very well, so I started
even though, like, as a society and as a culture, where print is really going down, it sounds like a person going into or thinking about going into journalism, there's just so many open doors that haven't even evolved yet, probably, right? Would you say?
So it's kind of it's a double-edged sword, because there's a lot of opportunity in journalism broadly, but it's a tough market job-wise. I've had plenty of friends who've been laid off. I've been through like 3 or 4 rounds of layoffs myself, where I
really
the cut because I was young and probably not making that much money for it to make that much of a difference. So it's definitely a tough industry. I won't sugarcoat it that way, because there are really talented people out there who are struggling to keep a job. But if you are willing to adapt and make yourself marketable, I have a lot of friends who freelance, and that's a tough gig.
Right, no benefits.
Yeah, no benefits, and you really have to be motivated for it. But the friends that I have who do it love it, and it really works for them. So if you're willing to be adaptable, able to take a few risks with your career, and if it's something you really love, because it is tough. So,
and I'm glad you brought that up, because college is getting like ungasly expensive. It's,
Yeah.
it's gone up 251% just in the past generation. And here in Pennsylvania, you're talking $37,000 at the flagship Penn State University. And so really we're talking about $160,000 over 4 years. The rule of thumb is that you should not borrow more money than what you're going to make your first year out. And that's really not realistic, right? And so with journalism, where I've had students saying, should I major in journalism? And the parents are pretty calculated about that and have some opinions, and they're concerned. Just exactly what you pointed out about just the marketability of it, maybe a lower salary. Like what could a grad today coming out of college anticipate? Maybe just a ballpark figure making.
When I graduated in 2014, I made $25,000 a year, and it did not increase much. When I moved to California, I was making like 45. So that's under the poverty line.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll be frank with you. I didn't have basically any money. My apartment was garbage. You really got to scrimp. And luckily I was privileged enough to have parents who were, if anything had happened to me at that point, who would have been willing to, take me in off the street. So it definitely is concerning if you're really worried about money, or if that's not an option for you. I would kind of recommend you major in something maybe broader, like English or communications, because then you can focus down into journalism. And also have a fallback if that doesn't work out for you.
Right. And even with those kind of liberal arts degrees, you could potentially be in the same boat, right? Because, what are you going to do with an English major or a communications major? At least with journalism, you've got a certain, tangible skill there that you can take. I think though, for people who are creative, might you have had a lot of regrets if you hadn't done the journalism path? Might you have always wondered, gee, what could have happened? Like,
I wouldn't have made it in any other track. If you tried to put me in like engineering or something like that, I would have failed out immediately. For those of us who think more creatively and are just like a writer at your core, follow your heart. Your passions will always lead you to something that you can script together, even if you're, making $25,000 a year, living in a $400 a month apartment in Zanesville, Ohio. It comes together in unexpected ways, but I would say follow your heart, but also use your brain. It's the combination that's difficult to pin down, but
no, that's really good. And the three things that I'm hearing you say are if you're creative, if you are adaptable, and if you have a certain tolerance for risk taking, and you think, gee, I'd love to do journalism, then I'm hearing you say, go for it. Because if that doesn't materialize, you can definitely go into a side door. And I've led all kinds of students and graduates into those side doors who thought that they were going down one career path and then needed to take a sharp left turn.
Yeah, and I have a ton of really talented colleagues and friends who we all went to journalism school together. A couple years in, they realized that's not for them for whatever reason, and they've become teachers, PR people, working in communications, working for the state. I have one friend who just went to law school after covering crime for a couple of years. So
that's a great insight, right? And just like what you said about the PR, because there's all kinds of corporations that need public relations, right? Mm-hmm. So maybe that's a safer bet there.
Yeah, and PR definitely has a higher salary, higher base salary, and one great thing about journalism is because you work so closely with PR people, it's a really easy pivot, because once you've worked in journalism, if you were to be a PR person, what a journalist would want to hear to pitch the story. So you get a unique perspective from that. Teaching is always a great thing because journalists are great storytellers and they like to explain. You're basically teaching in all your articles. So journalism pivots into other careers quite well as well.
Perhaps branding and marketing, the creative sides of those things with the social media platforms, right?
Definitely. Social media is huge. If you have the skill and tolerance for that, you can make a whole career on that.
That's really insightful. I think that, what you've brought here today is just a perspective that's been very authentic. And that's what I appreciate so much, because like, I want students to know, these are the possibilities and you really can have permission to pursue your dreams. And at the same time, like, let's not sugarcoat it. Let's tell them the reality of how difficult it is, some of the long grinding boundary needs to set, and just like, if you need to change and go into another lane, you have the ability to do that.
Oh yeah, that's the thing. I wish that someone had given me kind of the same straight talk back when I was thinking about journalism. I don't know if it would have changed anything I did, but I would have at least known.
So if you were going to share a couple websites here tonight, it sounds like you would share popculture.com.
Yeah, so popculture.com, and all the publications that I worked for before, if you're looking for more of a newsy example of what I was up to, they're wonderful. So desertsun.com, and I think it's just ZanesvilleTimesRecorder.com.
That's
That
fantastic. Yeah, I'll be sure to add those links when we're done here so that people can check it out and just kind of see the panorama of not only the work that you've done, but I think it represents what other people could do, taking that early path out of college into where you are now. So it's just, thank you for sharing some time here and helping to, illuminate young students who are, very much on the path to considering what college and what major and what career. And it's just exciting to see that. So I want to thank you for that. And I want to remind everybody that, my 4-year plan in the North Hills is my4yearplan.com. And I always offer a free 1-hour consultation to new clients who are considering working with their students. I start with them in 9th grade and go all the way through 12th, because as you probably remember, Anna, there's so much that you have to do in those critical years, right?
Oh my gosh, yes, you guys are at such an exciting stage in life, and I wouldn't go back for a million years. You got some tough decisions to make, but you're on your way.
Thank you so much, Anna Rumer.
Thanks so much.